as you know, I have a studio in the Cherry Building in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And here I was during COVID working on a variety of projects for the last couple of years. And one of them has to do with mixing jigsaw puzzles that have the same stamp, different pictures. This is something I've done for, well, I learned how to do this when I was 10 years old, and I'm going to be 80 this summer. So yeah, I've done them for a while, but not consistently. I do them on and off. I throw a batch together, and in some ways, this group of work that's you can see a little bit of over there on the wall. In some ways, this let's see, which camera is that? Okay, there's I can. In some ways, the work that's on the wall currently, which I'm just going to pan, and then I'll show you details of it later. The work that's on here it's like the Last Supper. It's the last. For some reason, I think it's the last batch of puzzles that I make this way. The way I made them for my whole career is to find puzzles that are manufactured to have the same stamp but different pictures. So they're already pre-made for me. So it's a kind of found art material, and I take pieces out of one and move it to another one that has the same stamp, and take those pieces out and move it back to the first one. So that's what I've been doing, and you know, I've spent a lot of time trying to find those kinds of puzzles, and I have rules and suggestions for how to find them, but they're not easy to find. And these days, rather than in the past, I have to kind of get them on eBay and get them from sources where the materials are getting to be more and more expensive for the ones I like to use, which are traditionally were old springback puzzles from around 1970. So they're getting harder and harder to find. And so I was looking for some contemporary companies that made puzzles that use the same stamp but different pictures. I found this company in Canada called 4 Point Puzzles. 4 Point Puzzles was sent me some pictures. You see, they're in Canada, but they have the puzzles printed in China, of course, because puzzle manufacturers are no longer puzzle factories. They are kind of design firms that choose images to be made into puzzles, and then they send it off, a file off to China. China prints them out, sends them back, and then they distribute them, and whatever happens. I particularly like the fact that 4 Point Puzzles had a series of pictures of paint by numbers, and I thought that would be kind of, you know, if I couldn't find. It used to be that Springbok even commissioned artists to make jigsaw puzzle pictures, and then they went to museum gift shops at our museums and said, can we put puzzles in your gift shop that are of the paintings in your collection? So they made deals about the rights to those things. But after a while, that got expensive for them, and they decided no, they'd do their own imagery, and they started making pictures of illustrations, greeting card illustrators, and Norman Rockwell and other things like that. Well, that was less interesting to me because I like the connection of fine art to the work that I was making, because it would work in a museum setting. So then they stopped doing that because of copyright reasons. But this company made pictures of paintings, but they were kind of generic paintings, like paint by numbers, like, you know, or a mountain or whatever. I hoped, I wished, I crossed my fingers that that these puzzles would have the same stamp. I thought maybe there was a possibility because the company probably wasn't manufacturing; they're just sending them to China to have them stamped out. And I said, well, I'll buy a couple. Well, these were high quality puzzles. These were $25 plus tax, plus if I got it from the company, they wouldn't even give me a wholesale. So they were like $28 with shipping. It was kind of expensive, but I tried them and they worked. And so I made a few, mixing them, and I thought this was great, but I wasn't sure I could afford them to have, like, in order to make one collage out of two puzzles, I had to have two puzzles. So that was like $60 just to put the materials together, and then I had to put the puzzles together, and then I had to try to mount them and sell them in some way. It just was all seemed, it got very entrepreneurial, is what I'm saying. And so I decided, well, I'll just kind of pass on it for now. And then the company went out of business. And before they went out of business, they had a sale, and I bought boxes of them. Not hundreds of boxes. I bought about 40, 50 puzzles. They're 1,000-piece puzzles, and I didn't really have the energy to put them together myself. So I recruited a group of friends and people who I knew were interested in jigsaw puzzles. I'd go to swap meets or things like that, and I'd say, hey, how'd you like to be an assembler for me? How'd you like to do brand new jigsaw puzzles? All the pieces are there. They're brand new, mint condition, high quality puzzles. The only deal is you put them together and then you bring them back to me assembled, and I'll give you another one. And eventually we put together 25,000 puzzle pieces of work to make this most recent batch of collages. Now I'm going to show you those when I share the screen. Okay. Now I'm going to turn to the other camera. And where am I? Okay, I'm here. I'm just missing an action. Here I go. Okay. Now, it's okay with you. And did you have any questions about that? Is there anything that's not clear?
I don't have questions about it. This is a monologue or dialogue in which I am, I want to hear what you have to say and see the puzzles.
Right. Okay, we're going to look at what the result is of that process. I'm going to share the screen now. And it says host is disabled participant from screen sharing. So can you allow me to screen share?
Sure. Does that help?
Okay, no. Now you're sharing your screen, but I want to share my screen. Let's see if I'm doing that. You have to enable participant screen sharing.
I already have it at one participant can share at a time. Since you're the only participant.
It still says that the host has disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, now what about now?
Okay, well, let's try again. Okay, now I have the options, but what I'm looking at, let's see. Okay, now let's see. I'm just seeing your screen. I want to share my screen. Hold up. I think it's in the ball is my court. So let me try to get to it. Photos. Yes, okay. Here's the thing. So all right. I think I'm getting it to it now. Okay. Now that's a picture from my from my thing. I'll go back to the beginning here. So this is the front door to my studio, and here are some here's what the walls the collages look like on the wall and then the far wall, and here's my studio that I'm streaming from. And I'm going to show you this one to start off with, because it's the first one I made. I had three puzzles that had paint by number pictures. One was of a forest, one was of a desert, and one was of a kind of barren mountain. And I put them together. I put the forest and the desert together and kind of got this and kind of got cactuses instead of birch trees, and natural arches, and a person riding a donkey into the forest. But the forest, as the person on the donkey comes into the forest, he or she brings the desert with them. So it was kind of a climate change theme idea. Like, with the progress of civilization, the primeval forest is replaced by the desert, deforestation, and things like that. So that's what this picture was meant to convey. But when I made it, using those two puzzles, then I made two other puzzles, like one that was of the mountain and the forest, and one that was of the desert and the mountain. So let's look at those again in sequence. So here's the lush primavera, and then the approach of civilization brings the desert with it, and it ends up a barren landscape. So it's like a triptych, three separate artworks that tell a story about ecological change due to human impact. That got the idea?
Okay. Yes, I got the idea. And these are three separate ones, right?
Yeah, these are three separate puzzles. They're
okay.
And then of course that was the first set I did. And then when I got the quantity of ones and people were putting them together for me, I had to come up with some other ideas. And here are some of the other ideas. I had a puzzle. I'll show you the puzzle on my screen. I had a puzzle that was kind of a geometric picture. Oh, yeah, I can't share my camera, but it was just a sort of tangled lines, and it was all different colored lines, and I took the blue lines from the picture and mixed them into the desert picture. I had several copies of the desert now, and it kind of made it look like a kind of a board game where you kind of wander around the surface of the person on the mule seems to be kind of following a board game path through the picture. That's another
I think
one.
what's interesting is the person that's on the donkey disappears a lot. It looks like he's disappearing into the background, or there's water. Like here, I see water. I see like one of those machines that in at a circus or at Disneyland, one of those machines that goes around and around and around, and people can ride on it. It's lots of different impressions: the stones, the rocks, the water.
Well, here the thing that I think that's kind of interesting about this series is that's the only human figure and animal figure in the puzzles. And so when it appears, it kind of is on a everyman kind of journey through the whole suite of puzzles. It's not in this one, but here those tangled lines. I don't know if you can see it. I'm going to point it out with my little hand pointing thing here. I sort of see a whale on its back here with its mouth open, and then its tail here, kind of the red outlining its huge flipper tail in the water, as if it's been beached in a way on the shore of the ocean. And then there's this one. That one took the red parts of the picture. This is taking sort of the yellow parts of the picture It doesn't really have as much meaning to me. But one thing that happened while making this puzzle was I started thinking about that connection between the painted surfaces and those lines, and how it made it interesting. It made the painting look, the paint by numbers aren't very interesting as impasto or something like that. But here, the painting seems to drip off the lines. You know, it seems to have this physical quality that's kind of suspended on a network of the black lines here. And I'm going to show you this next one. So the first one, let's just say, when I put it together, it was more like a story, a narrative, a more representational kind of mixing of the puzzles. The second one was a slight abstraction, although that board game aspect of it had a certain thing. Now look at this one, and then the one previously that we just looked like here is totally abstract and kind of expressionistic with a little bit of geometric expressionism. And then look at this one. I don't know if you see this, but this is a demonstration of how our brains work. At some point, I saw a picture here. I saw a face of a sailor, the head of a sailor with his sailor cap up here. You see at the top, he's got his sailor cap. Here's one eye, here's the other eye, here's his mouth. And then he's in this Tahiti kind of thing. Now that's not in the picture. That's something I discovered in the picture. But now that I pointed out to you, it's hard for you not to see that face in the picture. And because of the background, it seems like just to create a little kind of story of a mixture of kind of abstraction, and then because I put a name on it, or I've described it to you, like these look like sort of his bangs over his forehead, and that's his hat again, and this is maybe the tie that sailors wear with the neckerchief that they wear on their things, and this is Tahiti in the background. This is much more just painterly kind of mix, but again, because the little figure is there, he seems to be lost, or in encountering an incredibly complicated environment. There were also some other pieces that didn't have these were square, and they didn't have
excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt you, but are now some of them made by other people? In this series, are some of them made by other people that you reinvented?
Well, that's a good question. People assembled them for me, but they didn't mix them. But I do have one person, Deborah Lebeda, who's been following this for the last 2 years. Sometimes I think of her as my business manager. Sometimes I think of her as my collaborator. Sometimes I think of her as my student. Anyway, and mostly I think of her as a friend. But she actually, I'll show you at the end of these pictures. She took 2 of them home and mixed them on her own to see if they would be noticeably different from the ones that I make, right? Because we're using the same materials and the same techniques. Would the work look exactly the same? We'll find out. Okay. See, these are some square ones. The square ones, unfortunately, were not perfect matches for mixing. So I had to kind of mix them in layers. And you'll see that this is 3 different puzzles, but they're mixed in layers. And then here's another one. You can see the shadows and so forth on the pieces there. So you see they're not perfect fits. The middle part did fit pretty well.
See, I think we see different things. Now I see this snout of like a fox ear.
One of the 3 puzzles was a kind of outsider artist illustration. There's this woman down here.
Right.
There were various buildings and so forth, and this sort of fox-like creature that was kind of wrapped around them. I used the other puzzle with this scalloped edge to be there, and I put that quilt thing in the middle. But as you can see, I reused some of those pieces that are the quilt and the part that's the scalloped middle on different puzzles. So it tended to make a series of them.
Oh, I like this. It's
This
very
is
quilt-like.
I kind of like the dimensional aspect of them. They kind of, it kind of adds a little bit of visual excitement. The pieces fit, but they're not fit in. They're kind of layered on top. And it was just an experiment. Like I like this one a lot. I just took the lines out of the quilt here and replaced them with a puzzle that's with what's on the puzzle underneath it.
Okay.
This is, for instance, like two puzzles, all the pieces to two puzzles. One has the bottom and one has the top. And the pieces that were taken out of the quilt are on the right-hand side, and if those were moved to the left-hand side, they'd fill in the same pieces in there. But again, I'm playing with the layers.
Was this an actual quilt, or you made a quilt out of the puzzle?
Was it an actual one?
Was this actual quilt? Was the puzzle of a quilt, or
Yep.
did you?
Yes. No, the puzzle was of a quilt and a more amoebic kind of fan-shaped amoeba painting. And I just took pieces out of one, moved it to the other one, but this time in layers. So I actually had to have 3 puzzles in order to make these 2. I had to, you've seen the 2 bottom puzzles, which are complete. There were 2 of those fan-shaped ones, and then I put the quilt one and took half of the quilt parts and moved it to the other to the other side.
All right.
Okay, and then here's a few more. I started making some big ones that looked like that were double size. So these are 2,000 piece artworks, and this one kind of has, I don't know if you have to look at this one for a while to see why I found it interesting. I took a puzzle that was horizontal, that is the ocean, and separated the sky from the land. So here's the sky for the ocean puzzle, and here's the ocean for the ocean puzzle. And then I took a vertical puzzle of the palm trees, and I separated it the same way, kind of a zipper that went through the picture. And then I switched sides on them. So the 2 parts of the palm trees are combined by this, what we would call a diptych. It's a diptych is a painting that has 2 images that are butted right up against each other, so that you make a continuous work with a small separation in them. This is a diptych. But I found some interesting things. Like when I look at this picture of the ocean on this size, I kind of see a face of a Dalmatian. I see like this eye here, and kind of a nose, mouth, muzzle part here, and kind of, eyebrow kind of thing to there. And the water comes down as if it's coming down off a waterfall. And then here, the sky kind of moves from horizontal to just sliding off the end of the earth. And what I particularly like is this little postcard down here. See how that, because this was butted up, because it brings those trees forward, and it somehow gives a kind of depth that I don't know where it came from. It's accidental from my rearranging.
This puzzle is the most obvious section,
Yeah.
You have the postcard, it's the most obvious of the sections. You can see the different sections of things, the tree, the postcard, the water, the sky.
Well, sometimes the simplest are the best. They're the ones that people can relate to the easiest. But then other times I really work hard to camouflage the intersection between the things, because I want them to act a little liminally, that is, in not this and not that, in between two different images. Let's look at another one, like this one. This one is actually combining two rectangular puzzles and a third puzzle that's made up of two circular puzzles. So there's a total of 3 puzzles. There's 3,000 pieces here, and it's layered. And there's an earth, a view of the earth, and then a view of this kind of, to me, it looks like a phone dialer or a thing there. And there's a complement to it, which is this one. This is the interior parts of the earth, the center, and the outside parts of those 2 pictures.
I think what's interesting about them is the dimensionality, the layering, the way the colors run into each other, the way the different dimensions are seen. You could look at them and see many different things, you know, depending on
I like those
what
2 series. Those are the biggest ones that I made, the ones with the most pieces. Here's a combination of, you see how now the person on the mule is the ocean is sweeping over the desert. And of course this is happening in some places. It happens annually in some places like the southwestern desert of the United States, but you know, what if it happened on a cataclysmic scale and the oceans were washing over the land?
Right.
This one, this is upside down, but I like the fact that the cactuses sort of become stalactites, and this looks like an underground lake of some sort, and here's the water in it, and it suggests a kind of, this circle up here suggests this kind of cavernous interior. Those 2 combined make this picture, which again is a diptych with that kind of clear line in between them, but I've camouflaged it so that you don't notice it as much as you did in the palm trees.
I think the fascinating thing about them that you could see many things. Like over here, I see a cave and water, you know?
Yeah.
And then the upside down cactuses, and then the ocean, and what we were talking about before with the man and the donkey, or the man and the horse, and all that.
Well, one thing that I always try to share with people is that our minds are sense-making tools. We make sense out of things that don't make sense because we are seeking sense. We're seeking a resolution to an image. We want to make sense of it, even if it's been intentionally mixed up or chaoticized. You know, it's been made chaotic. Even if if the artist has done that, we still look for a way to make sense of it, and we tell ourselves a story. And to me, that's like sharing the responsibility for being the artist with the viewer. The viewer is responding to it as an artist as well.
Well, okay. Yeah.
No, feel free. What was you thinking?
Well, I would just say that happens with every art piece. You know, the viewer views it and sees it according to his own or her own perception.
Yes, but I understand that that's how you understand it, but you're an artist in that sense. And the general public does not generally consider themselves to have a role in the creation of an artwork. They think they're spectators. In fact, they are participants.
Right.
Yep. Okay. Well, we artists understand that.
Yeah.
here's what Deb came up with. I would not have come up with these two things, but here's her two pictures from one of the desert and one of the thing. See how she's made this kind of volcano here. This isn't really a negative space. It's a at the top of a mountain. It's just a shadow of the part of the arch there, but she's created a kind of funnel shaped volcano coming out of there. And over here, the person on the mule is like approaching a kind of a chasm between there and there, and they're considering, it seems to me, to use these fallen trees to bridge that chasm. And she's taken what was the sky here and made it into the wall of a canyon. You see, and here's kind of water pouring over this side of that thing, but I really have the feeling that this is a huge physical wall in that area. So the answer to the question was, does the viewer make the art? And in a way, Deborah made the art here by seeing it through her eyes rather than mine. And she mixed them together, and now I see her work as art. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna shift now back to stopping the share, and so I know it's kind of hard for me to be talking while we're just looking at static things, and we're watching you enjoy the enjoy the pictures and ask the questions. But now here we're a bit more in dialogue again, and let's just talk about that for a second, because you've hit on a very strong point of what I've been trying to work, and that is that the role of the participant in making sense out of something that the artist in effect has kind of hidden from view, and the viewer is trying to reassemble the jigsaw puzzle, reassemble the image, and come to an understanding of it. And that's important. That's important. It's a whole new view of the role of the spectator in art. That's a 21st century idea. I think it's really a 21st century. Artists were aware of it, but they never, in my opinion, drew it to the viewer's attention, because they wanted all the credit themselves. They were making the art, the viewer wasn't making the art. But the fact was, the viewer was contributing all along to what the art is, and they're just refining their role in art making.
Yeah, I think that the viewer is a participant and sees it for what they see it as. I think in your pieces that comes out more clearly, because there are things upside down, sideways, cut out. So you have to assemble them in some way in your mind to make them representational, or see it as an abstract. But when there's a tree standing in the middle of on the side, it's really hard not to see it as representational.
That's right.
So seeing it representational, then you start creating things,
I'm so glad. I mean, this is not a mystery to me. I have never been an artist of mystery. I have never been an artist who doesn't show their cards. I've never been the artist. I've always tried to demystify art. I've tried to make it. I've tried to make it something that is not in the hands of sorcerers, but in the hands of communication, some form of.
But no, it is sorcerers. You are a sorcerer, because these are for the other person. They're magical and sorcerer-like and recreations of things in their mind, in the mind of the of the viewer, you know. They're recreating, but in a way, they're also the sorcerer. So both of you are sorcerers. You're a sorcerer who created it, and I'm the
Yes.
sorcerer who
Yes.
remakes it.
Oh, yes. Okay. Now, can I show you a few more things that I'm working on that follow
Absolutely.
this idea? Because I,
Yes.
as a result of COVID and working with a group of designers, engineers, and artists from all over the world, 144 artists got together through the auspices of the Buckminster Fuller Institute. And we started something called the Design Science Decade. And I was part of the first 144 artists, but we're ready to start the third decade of the third year of this decade. By last year the first year there was 144. Last year there was 144, and they're ready to take 144 new artists on. And by the end of the decade, they'll have approximately 1,500 artists that have been through this experience. And because of COVID, we were all a mix of virtual and real kind of exchange. We were all doing Zoom calls like we're doing right now in order to share our work. And I use those Zoom calls just to play with the medium of Zoom. And that included, let's see, where am I? I'm just seeing myself in a thumbnail, so it's a little bit harder for me to work with exactly what I'm working with. But let me just try to find a background here that we might find amusing. Okay, so you you see, all I'm doing is virtually inserting. Okay, I'm going to take that thing off there. All I'm doing is virtually inserting into that green parts of that other picture a painting that I made 50 years ago that kind of has cartoon characters in it,
There's your whale. There's your whale.
Okay, let's look at them again. This time I'm going to turn it on and off for you. Okay, so this is no background. See, that's the way it looks normally. That's the way it looks in real life. This is physically on a blackboard behind me, a green felt board. And then anything that's green, I can replace with, I can replace it with the Golden Gate Bridge, or I can replace it with cellular structure, or I can replace it with things. But the little figures that I have there, the little people, they don't change. But see, this is kind of like the history of the world. Noah's Ark, the Parthenon, medieval times, industrialization, suburban housing, and missiles, and man trying to catch up with the dinosaur. That's like that little man. That's like that little man on the donkey in the other pictures. It's the story part of it, but then the story is now I'll just show. Here's a layer of those pictures and some more of these things. This is what's called. Did you ever go to Sunday school?
Yes.
Because in Sunday school, they used to have these flannel graphs. There was just pieces of felt, and they had these little cutout figures like paper dolls, and they had felt on the back of them, and they would stick to the felt in the background. Well, I'm using green felt, like the green screen, and putting these little paper dolls with a little bit of story to them, the story of the creation of the world, or the history of civilization. I'm putting those on top of that, telling that story as if it's a Sunday school story, But the fact is, I can take the green background and I can put other pictures in there, other layers. you're seeing this better than I'm seeing. It's kind of hard for me to work this way because you're seeing stuff that I can't really see too well. Okay, here's another painting and another,
Interpretation.
Some allegorical things. It's much more complicated, but it's totally easy because all I have to do is take what you see. I mean, take what I have as a background, and I can add something in there. Now, this is what was interesting to me. I just said, what if the viewer going to the museum with their cell phone in hand, and these days people take pictures of the things in the museum all the time. Sometimes it says no photograph. They can't. I went to the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, and all this art, and the guards were desperately trying to keep people from taking pictures of Venus on the half shell or whatever the famous paintings were there. But everybody had a cell phone. They couldn't police it. They could stop them from using tripods and fancy cameras, but they couldn't stop this, basically what's like our form of Google Glasses. Everything we look at, we can take a picture of, because we have a camera with us ready to do that. So
would you do something like this? Sorry, I have some kind of allergy or cold or something. Would you do something like this? You have one background, you have your image, then that background can change. Then the interpreter can interpret what they see.
Yes.
Then you take a picture of it and you have one still, and then you add another still with a different impression, and you have 140 artists, each interpreting what they see, and then taking a picture or zoom of what they see in that one image. Okay. And then move on to the next artist.
And you're jumping ahead. You're jumping ahead of me here right now. But I would tell you that's exactly the kind of thinking that I had. I said, what if I made a painting that was half green screen and half image, and I put that in the museum, and then the viewer could walk up to it and it could take a picture of it, but they could insert into the green parts of the picture something from their own photographs.
Exactly.
Well, there's a way to do that. There's a program called Chroma Vid, CHROMAVID. You can load it on your cell phone, and you can also so then if you go to a picture, now I'm going to show you a picture that has this possibility. Okay, maybe we can look at this picture over here if I can switch to the other camera. This is technology. I'm not the most technological person, but that's what I like. What I like about it is that I'm using a technology. Now you see, there's a picture on the wall, and if I take the chroma off, if I take the virtual background off of it, you can see, if I can go to none, you see it's just a painting that's it's made off of a Grant Wood painting. You can kind of see it. It's a group of figures in the spring planting a garden or plowing the fields. But about a half of the picture is green. And if I choose, I can put things into that background, like, a mountain or something else into the picture. And those people are still working in the, as you can see, they're still, I'll take it off this. So can you kind of see that I can change that background. The green can be the background of those people working in the picture. I'm sorry I don't have a long enough extension here to show you this to show you this more accurately, but it's exactly what you were suggesting you could do. You could make a painting that's part intended to be filled in by the viewer. So the viewer walks up to this picture, they take a picture of it with their cell phone. They take a picture of a green picture, but this program on their cell phone puts this other background in the picture, and they can choose that background from a little palette of ones that are provided, or you can go to your camera's files and pick a picture that's important to you personally and add that to the picture, that to the picture. To me, this is like a revolution. This is like, would be something where everybody goes to the museum and sees a different picture. It's very much like John Cage used to say. He wanted there to be kind of music that everybody sitting in the room heard a different thing.
Right. And they would hear a different thing.
And everybody would go and look at this picture and would see a different thing. Now I'll show you how.
So if you guys get together again and do this, you definitely can have participating Zoom.
I'm going to show you what. I think I can show you one more thing that I did recently. There was a project. Okay. There was a project at PS1 in Iowa City for people to make flags for Earth Day. And I said, "Oh, I'm not sure I have time." And then my brother was in hospice, and I had to go to Michigan. And I wasn't sure I had time to make one, but I just said, "Well, what if I make just a flag that's like a green screen, and I find a program that people can put their own image on the flag." So let's see if I have that here somewhere. Okay, so I'm not sharing screen again. Let me do that.
No, do you want to share screen?
Okay, here. No, I will go and do it. Let's see this. I'm going to share the screen again, and I'll show you the examples of it. Okay, so here.
Okay.
See here, this was my idea, was for PS1, which was to have a flag that was just a green screen, and you could insert your picture in if you have put the program on your phone. So I'm going to see if I got it. Oh, I'm sorry. I can't. Hold on just a second. I want to show it to you, so I'm going to take the effort to just find it here on Facebook and go to it a second, so you can see what it looks like. I do all this experimentation, most of it on Facebook, so you can see what I'm doing. Watch my progress. Oh, here it is. Okay. You see the man is waving a flag, but Guernica is on the flag because that's in the green screen. It's just a green flag, but Guernica is playing across it. Are you seeing it?
Complicated stuff.
It is. It seems like it, but it's simple. He's just got a piece of green fabric, and I had a picture of Guernica on my film, in my phone, and I just said, okay, treat Guernica as the background, and he'll wave this green flag, and there it is. It was simple as pie. Right. I'm going to stop sharing and go back to me being crazy enthusiastic. Okay.
Okay, I think it's exciting, and I think you should do this with your group of artists and see what happens. Get them involved. See, I would like to see it like a documentary kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Like instead of like a still, I would like to capture, record, and have the other people see it and put themselves in it or talk about it, and then
Uh-huh.
it becomes
Uh-huh.
interesting to me.
Yeah, I totally understand that even though you know, I do it on the simplest level I can to explain the technology. I can't fathom the the complexity that this might play in people's perceptions, you know. And I would like to hear what people how people use this technique or do something with it, or you know, how they interact with it, because very soon it just becomes a gimmick as far as they think of me. I came up with the idea. They're gonna take the ball and run with it. Well,
Now,
that's the kind of thing that happens when you're 80.
okay, what happens with what was the software? COVID, not COVID. The software that made it possible to put the Guernica on the flag.
Yeah, yeah. It's true. It's true that we suddenly were aware that we had tools that were in our hands already that we weren't using. It never occurred to us to use them. It never occurred to people who were making Zoom calls that they could do something, that they were living in a world that was partly real and partly virtual, and that they could modify that in some ways. So this wall behind me, this is David Dunlap. David Dunlap has a studio in Iowa City. He's a friend of mine, and we have a little club of old guys that's called 1 Foot In and 1 Foot Out. Two of his collaborators have already passed away, Joe Patrick and Howard Bergoven. They were members of the 1 Foot In, 1 Foot Out club too, and sooner or later David and I are going to join them. But the idea is, I wanted to have during the Zoom years a way to kind of be in the same room with him. So I took the measurements of the window in his studio living room, and I made a window in my studio that has those same dimensions, but it has a green screen so that I can put myself outside of his window. I don't know if I can do that. Just a second. Let's see if I can do it. Here I am in the picture. Let's see. So here I am.
There you are. On the
There
right
I
hand.
am. I'm outside of his window looking in, and if I took all the green, if I took all the imagery away, you would see that his backyard is all back here, and I took a picture of myself looking in his window, and then I can put myself outside of his window, or I can put him outside of mine.
See, the thing that fascinates me is okay, you put yourself outside the window, but it's still a still. What fascinates me is you're talking in front of a picture of you looking in through David's window and talking about that. And I'm talking to you and watching you in David's window. And I like that aspect of it.
Well, I'm sure it's intimidating and hallucinogenic to the average person. You know, it's just like there's too many layers here. I don't know what I'm looking at. That's why I try to make things as cartoony and commonplace like paint by numbers or jigsaw puzzles. I try to make things as unthreatening as possible, use the materials that people understand to help them come to a closer
Perception.
understanding. Yeah.
You're actually teaching them about perception.
Yes.
What perception is, what kind of
so.
perception they're, how they can interact with the perception.
No. Well, you get it. That's all I'm going to say is that you get it, and hopefully, I'm using materials and ideas that a general public can get as can get as well.
Well, Mel, if you have 140 artists, you should invite me if you don't mind, so I can participate in recording the 140.
Here's how it goes. You have to go to the Buckminster Fuller Institute's page and research the Design Science Studio and make an application. I don't choose the things and I don't invite the people, but people can apply. Melissa Lockwood is a friend and she designs fashions from the waste material that people make, that people create, the waste material when they do high fashion. They cut the dress pattern out, but then the rest of it is just waste. And she makes clothing out of that high fashion waste. And so
where does she find this high fashion waste?
Oh, she does it in dumpsters outside of factories and things where they're just throwing it away.
Right.
So everybody in the Design Science Studio has to have a project.
This is my project.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that's fine. That's fine. You don't even have to have it at the beginning of the year of residency, but you have to in conjunction with all the other people come up with an idea that, and this is the key. You have to have a project that will make things better for 100% of life on the planet.
Well, I think talking to each other and listening to each other and being alive might make things better, because if you aren't alive, then you don't have the perception.
Well, I'm convinced that that's a worthy project and that you're doing that project, and you can certainly use me as a reference point, but it is a process, and good luck. I hope you try it.
Oh, I might. I don't know, but I like talking to people. Okay, well, I'm gonna check out the site and see what happens.
Let's look at the application.
But in any case, thank you, Mel. Thank you for a wonderful experience. I had a lot of fun, and I learned a lot about perception and how I perceive things. And I saw things that you didn't see, and I saw things that you did see. But if you think that you made me see what you wanted me to see, I don't think so. I think I saw what I wanted to see, but you had created the situation in which I could interpret seeing what I wanted to see. However, you were leading my perception, which I find interesting.
Great. I'll look forward to your posting of the program. Hopefully, you'll edit out my exuberance.
Oh, absolutely not.
And it was great talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Have a good day.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.